Some nights everything outside sparkles. The glow of restaurant lights reflected on glass windows, the soft clinking of wine glasses, a gentle jazz tune playing quietly in the corner. Yet inside someone's heart, there's only a hollow emptiness that nothing can fill. That evening in a small restaurant on the outskirts of Boston, under the warm glow of candlelight and soft music, Natalie Harper sat alone at a table meant for two, facing a glass of red wine and a steaming plate of pasta. She smiled faintly as she spoke to herself, as if hosting a private talk show in her own head. "Welcome to my luxurious solo dinner. Tonight's special lonely pasta paired with a glass of ripe disappointment." She smirked, taking a sip of wine. From a few nearby tables, people stole quick glances before looking away. Natalie was used to it. Self-mockery was the armor she wore every day. But deep inside, there was still that void, and unspoken memories that refused to fade. And then, a low voice brushed against her ear. "Pretend I'm your boyfriend, just for now." Natalie jolted. She turned ready to fire off a sharp Harper-style comeback. But the moment she saw the face before her, her heart skipped a beat. It was Jake Brennan, the man she had once loved until she had no tears left. The man who had walked away 5 years ago with nothing but a suitcase and a vague promise, "I'll come back." He was no longer the naive college boy she remembered. Now he carried the rugged air of a man who had lived his eyes wiser, his shoulders broad enough to bear the weight of everything left unsaid. Natalie forced a smile, her gaze still sharp as ever. "Wow, a boyfriend on demand. You should know I charge a very high fee. Not easy to hire me." Jake didn't reply with a smile. He simply sat down across from her, eyes locked on her face, as if blinking might make her disappear. "You're still the same," he murmured. "And you've got a few more wrinkles. Been time traveling for work, huh?" Natalie chuckled with mockery, though her hand tightened under the table. The air between them grew heavy. In that instant, the whole restaurant blurred, the candlelight flickering like it too was trembling. Natalie took a long sip of wine, trying to drown out the pounding in her chest. "How amusing," she said, "my ex-boyfriend now auditioning as my stand-in date. Quite a bold casting choice." Jake nodded slightly, his voice rough. "Natalie, I know you don't want to see me, but I'm here because..." She cut him off. "You want forgiveness? For me to just let everything slide as if nothing ever happened?" Her eyes were cold, but her voice trembled. Jake stayed silent. She looked at him squarely, a bitter smile tugging at her lips. "You left the very day my mother was admitted to the hospital. I waited for a call, a message, something." He opened his mouth, but she raised a hand to stop him. Don't tell me you didn't know. You knew. You just chose not to call." The air shattered between them. A long silence stretched across the two half-finished glasses of wine. And then, as she always did, Natalie let out a laugh. "Come on, no need to let emotions ruin an expensive dinner. Let's just pretend we're dating again because, clearly, I need a dramatic story to tell the girls this Friday." Jake studied her for a long time. He seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he just stayed quiet, eyes never leaving the woman he had once loved, and maybe had never stopped loving. In the gentle light of the restaurant, the two of them sat face to face, two worlds colliding once more. One hiding behind sharp laughter, the other weighed down by a gaze full of unfinished longing. That night, Natalie walked out of the restaurant, her steps unsteady. The night breeze teased her hair, but her heart felt cold. Leaning against the taxi door, she whispered to herself, "Don't believe it again, Natalie. Once was enough." But as she glanced back over her shoulder, Jake was still standing there. Not speaking, not chasing after her, just standing, as if for the first time in his life, he didn't want to disappear. The next morning, Boston's sky wore a thin veil of mist tender, as if the city itself was cautiously touching something fragile. Natalie sat in her usual cafe, the Corner Cup, a place once filled with their laughter and the smell of burnt waffles whenever someone accidentally turned the oven knob the wrong way. Her hand absent-mindedly stirred the silver spoon in her half-empty latte. Her eyes wandered out the window, watching the steady stream of cars passing by, cold and indifferent, just like the emptiness that had lived inside her for the past 5 years. Jake arrived 3 minutes late, not long at all, yet enough to make her heart stumble with memories. Setting a cappuccino on the table, he smiled faintly. "Still cappuccino? After all these years, your taste hasn't updated?" Natalie arched a brow. Jake chuckled. "Coffee doesn't need to change, As long as you remember who used to make it. Natalie crossed her arms, resting her chin on her palm, eyes half teasing, half accusing. Sounds deep. Did you learn that from lonely nights in European airports? Jake nodded without hesitation. Maybe, but mostly from nights sitting alone, thinking about the one I left behind. The words froze Natalie for a moment. She laughed, a short soundbite but bitter. What are you trying to do? Jake rebuild what you smashed apart? Jake looked at her quietly, his gaze soft, not filled with hope, only the weight of a late confession. I'm not here to reclaim anything. I just want to be present, if you'll allow it. Natalie lifted her latte, took a sip, then asked softly, You want to know how my mom was back then? Jake nodded. Yes, I really want to know. She smiled faintly, but something in her eyes dimmed. My mom passed away 3 years ago. I was by her side from her first chemo session to her very last breath. Every day I brewed her favorite coffee. Every night I told stories to distract her from the pain. Every morning I opened the window, hoping to see a message, a call from the man who promised he'd return. The cafe air grew as heavy as her words. But there was nothing Jake. She set the cup down, only silence, and I learned how to live with it. Jake's voice dropped low. I'm sorry. When I left, I thought just a few years and I'd have everything, money, success. So I could come back and give you a better world. Natalie tilted her head, her eyes shimmering with tears, yet still edged with irony. The problem is I never asked for a better world. I just needed someone who'd stay. Jake lowered his gaze, nervously twisting the paper napkin in his hands. The same old habit from when he was anxious. Natalie noticed instantly, smirking. Still doing that? At this rate you could start a rope factory with napkins. Jake laughed, relieved for a moment. You still remember? I remember, so I can mock you, she quipped, then added, Not because I hold on to memories. Don't flatter yourself. But deep down, Natalie knew. Those little things she had never forgotten. Their conversation carried on, sometimes light-hearted, sometimes heavy. Jake spoke of the cities he had traveled, Paris, Tokyo, Dubai, each dazzling with lights, yet none with a dinner filled with genuine laughter. Natalie told him about her days at the publishing house, endless deadlines, nights spent under the lamp just to finish manuscripts, because no one was waiting for her to come home. As noon drew near, Jake asked softly, Can I see you again? Natalie shrugged, half playful, half guarded. I'll have to check my schedule. Might be busy, talking to my microwave all night. Jake chuckled, though his eyes still carried longing. Natalie stood slipping on her coat. Before leaving, she turned back. Jake, if you disappear again this time, I won't wait for another call. Jake only nodded. No promises, no pleading, just a sincere nod. And Natalie walked out, her heart tangled in contradictions. Yet, with each step she knew, the worst part wasn't that he had come back. It was that she still hadn't stopped hoping. A few days later, in the hurried rhythm of Boston life, Natalie began to notice something different. It wasn't a grand confession nor a long-winded letter, not expensive flowers nor constant phone calls. Instead, it was the little things quietly appearing in the spaces of her daily life, like someone was trying to mend the holes in her world without asking for credit. That morning, when she walked into her office at the publishing house, Natalie noticed something unusual. The notorious color printer, the one that broke down like clockwork every deadline, was now running smoothly as if it had just been reborn. She raised an eyebrow. Strange. No burning smell, no rattling, no confetti-shooting paper jams. Maggie, her colleague in design, looked up from her screen and chuckled. A tall guy with rolled-up sleeves fixed it early this morning. Called himself Mr. Fix-It, or something like that. Natalie froze for a moment, then hurried back to her desk. On her computer screen sat a technical note with instructions on how to prevent paper jams. At the bottom, in familiar handwriting. Not a miracle, just lift the lever on the right, like gently solving a problem. J. She exhaled, half laughing, half exasperated. Over the next few days, more little things kept happening. When the office water cooler inevitably ran dry at noon, usually meaning a lottery with the heavy replacement jugs, it was already swapped out neat and full. The tiny jasmine plant on her windowsill, long neglected and nearly dead, suddenly had fresh soil and sprouting leaves. In her desk drawer, she found a pack of mints with a folded note. For those stressful meetings, coffee betrays your breath too early. H. Natalie burst out laughing, leaning back in her chair. Oh, great, so now you're my invisible assistant. Friday night, the whole office stayed late, scrambling to finish materials for a new poetry campaign. Rain hammered against the glass, each drop tormenting those still trapped at work. Close to 10 p.m., Natalie finally stepped out of the building, clutching a stack of manuscripts, her thin trench coat no match for the downpour. She stood beneath the awning of a closed bookstore, watching the sheets of rain cascade down. Then a black umbrella popped open in front of her. Jake, one shoulder already soaked, spoke softly. "You'll thank me if you don't want the flu next week." Natalie squinted up at him. "So, besides Mr. Fix-It, you're running an umbrella service now." Jake tilted the umbrella toward her, letting the rain drench his side instead. "Premium upgrade, no extra charge." She laughed, but a crack of thunder made her jump, pressing herself against the wall. Jake said nothing. He simply angled the umbrella closer, his hand brushing lightly against her arm, gentle as if asking permission, never forcing. Her voice came quieter, still laced with sarcasm. "So, after walking me home, will you vanish again? Got another suitcase to collect." Jake paused, then answered firmly. "No suitcase, no promises, but tomorrow I'll still be here, and the day after too." Natalie stared at him, eyes shimmering with emotions both fragile and fierce. "And what if one morning I wake up, and you've disappeared again? I don't think I could get back up a second time." Jake didn't look away. He held her hand so lightly it felt like he feared breaking it. "If you're weak, lean on me. If you're strong, I'll walk beside you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm only asking for a place to stand by you every day." She stayed silent. In the rain, the city seemed to vanish, leaving only her heartbeat and the rhythm of raindrops on the umbrella. Then she drew a breath, forcing a smile. "You need to know 3 things. 1, replace the water jug properly. 2, don't touch the printer when I'm sending a file. 3, burn the pasta, and you're out." Jake chuckled warmly. "Number 3. Can we negotiate?" She tilted her head, pretending to think. "Maybe, if 1 and 2 are flawless." The umbrella tilted to cover them both. Together they walked slowly toward the waiting taxi. Natalie sighed, her joking tone gone. "I'm still scared, Jake." Jake nodded. "Still scared, but not alone. You don't have to fight alone anymore." For the first time in years, Natalie felt it. Maybe presence quiet and steady could be stronger than any promise. The rain that night should have only left her with wet shoes and a cold coat. But for Natalie, it left something deeper, a question mark in her heart, and a quiet pause in her mind. A few days later, as she walked past the old storage cabinet in the office hallway, Natalie's eyes fell on the tiny jasmine plant on the windowsill, the one she thought had completely died. To her surprise, new green shoots had sprouted, the fresh soil still dark and damp. She exhaled softly, quiet but not invisible. That Wednesday, she sent a text. "Book club tonight, 7 p.m. If you enjoy girls dissecting comic books as if they were Dostoevsky novels, then come." Jake's reply was a single word. "Dare." That evening, the Lantern, the cafe hosting the book club, was unusually lively. Inside, more than a dozen people sat in a circle around a large table, hands full of books, cookies, and a bottomless basket of drama. Natalie stood at the center like a commander, quick-witted and captivating. "I swear if the heroine runs into the forest clueless one more time, I'll officially volunteer as the assassin in the next chapter." The whole group burst out laughing. From a table in the back, Jake sat quietly watching. He saw her laugh loud, her eyes glowing like fireworks, her gestures animated like she was performing a one-woman play. But then, for a fleeting moment, when she turned away, her eyes fell shadowed. That smile didn't last. It was like a mask slipping just enough to reveal the cracks beneath. After the meeting, when everyone drifted out, Natalie walked alongside Jake. The autumn night was soft as silk, the scent of blooming night jasmine trailing in the breeze. Jake walked with his hands in his pockets. "You're different from what I imagined." Natalie shot him a glance, half teasing, half serious. "Different as in disappointing?" "No," Jake shook his head. "Different as in stronger, but also lonelier." Natalie paused for a beat. The words hit exactly where her armor was thinnest. She forced a laugh, brushing it off like dust from her coat. "I'm not lonely. I've got a whole team, me and my overactive imagination. I'm excellent at monologues. I can even argue with the washing machine." Jake laughed softly, but not loudly. His eyes lingered on her, as if he wanted to smooth away every thorn she had carefully built around herself. At the intersection, Natalie stopped. She turned to him, her smile faint, her voice lower. "Jake, you can go anywhere you want. Just don't make me promises. I'm allergic to promises." Jake wanted to reply, but she was already walking away, leaving him under the pale streetlight, his face etched with determination, and something that looked like regret. That weekend, Natalie attended the grand opening of a small bookstore cafe. Coincidence? Or maybe not. Jake was there too, chatting with a few old friends. As Natalie drew closer, one tall man, clearly an old buddy of Jake's, clapped him on the shoulder and said with booming enthusiasm, "Remember, if you had come back just for some girl back then, none of this today would have happened." Then he laughed loudly. Career always comes first. The words cut sharp like a knife. Everything around Natalie suddenly slowed. The laughter, the music, the golden lights, all blurred. She let out a sharp laugh brittle as shattered glass. So that's it. Career first. And me ranked nowhere. The atmosphere froze. Jake turned stunned. But Natalie didn't stop. She swirled the coffee in her hand, her voice dripping with mockery. "It's just math, really. If I was 0 and you were 1, then yes. I added nothing to your life's equation." With another bitter laugh, Natalie turned away. Jake rushed after her, trying to take her hand, but she pulled back. "I don't need explanations, Jake. People only slip up when they speak the truth. And now I know exactly what I was in your hierarchy." That night back in her apartment, Natalie didn't cry. She only let out a dry, hollow laugh. "Well done, Natalie. Once again, you've managed to play the supporting actress in your own life." She pulled the blanket over her head, her hand clutching the frayed keychain she had once held dear. This time no tears, only laughter, shaking like the sound of something breaking inside a heart where no one could hear. Saturday morning, Boston's sky was crystal clear, as if trying to comfort a soul that had just been wounded. Natalie sat at her familiar table in the corner cup, her laptop open, but her gaze drifting out the window. Children played tag across the street, their laughter scattering like shards of sunlight across her table. The latte before her had long gone cold. A gentle voice broke the silence. "Natalie?" She looked up surprised to see Maya. The woman who had once, with a simple tug on Jake's tie, accidentally touched the raw fracture in her heart. Natalie's guard went up instantly. She pressed her lips together and closed her laptop. "Hello, Maya. If this is about work, I'm not Jake's assistant." Maya smiled faintly, her demeanor free of hostility. She set a cappuccino on the table and spoke in a low, warm voice. "No, I'm not here for work. I'm here because of him, and because of you." Natalie narrowed her eyes. "Oh, dramatic. Like a soap opera? If you're here to tell me to let go, spoiler alert, I don't play the role of the kind forgiving woman very well." Maya shook her head. "Actually, it's the opposite." She met Natalie's gaze, her eyes steady, honest. "Jake has never forgotten you, Natalie." Natalie laughed dry and brittle. "That line sounds familiar. The kind you use to cushion the blow before a breakup." Maya didn't argue. Instead, she reached into her bag and placed something small on the table. A heart-shaped keychain, old and scratched the paint, long faded. Natalie froze, her chest tightening. "This," Maya nodded. "Jake carries it everywhere. Paris, Berlin, Singapore. Any city we worked in. I once teased him that among all the expensive souvenirs, that keychain looked so cheap. He only smiled and said, 'This one can't be replaced.'" Natalie clenched her fingers. She remembered it well. The first birthday gift she had given Jake back in college. They had no money, only small tokens of love. To her, it was a keepsake. To him, she had believed it was forgotten. Maya continued, her voice calm, never dramatic. "I worked with Jake for nearly 2 years. He rarely talks about personal matters, but on some late nights I'd find him standing by the window, turning this keychain over in his hand, sighing. Softly he'd murmur, 'As long as she still remembers me.'" The words fell between them like a drop of water on hot iron, sizzling, spreading. Natalie turned away, blinking back the wetness in her eyes. But the lump in her throat rose like a tide. "Why are you telling me this?" Her voice came out hoarse. "Because I don't want to become the third person between you two just because of a misunderstanding. And I know if I stay silent, you'll only keep tormenting yourself." Maya rose, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "Jake isn't perfect, but among the thousands of people he's met, you're the only one he's never been able to let go of. She smiled gently like the first breeze of autumn. I hope you don't lose that just because of a tie adjusted at the wrong moment. And then Maya walked away. Natalie sat frozen, clutching the keychain, her heart tearing in two. One half whispered, "He left once. He could leave again." The other half echoed Maya's words, "You're the only one he can't let go of." She let out a shaky laugh, fragile as a violin string pulled off key. Why is it so hard to believe someone, Natalie? That night in her small apartment, Natalie stood silently by the window. On the balcony, the jasmine plant had bloomed. Someone had once changed its soil, watered it, expecting no thanks. She placed the keychain on the table and sighed. Not because she had forgiven him, but because she finally understood true presence doesn't need to be declared. It simply stays quietly, steadfast, and gentle. By Monday, everything seemed to fall back into its old rhythm. Natalie walked into the office carrying the final proof of a poetry manuscript, but her mind still replayed Maya's words. Among the thousands of people he's met, you're the only one he can't let go of. She tried to focus on work. Luckily, or cruelly, chaos soon came knocking. The publishing house's latest campaign for a trending young poet had suddenly fallen into crisis. The author demanded certain poems be pulled right before printing. Marketing panicked. In the emergency meeting, the editor-in-chief snapped. If this isn't resolved in 3 days, we lose the sponsor. Every eye turned to Natalie. She nodded, her voice calm, almost unnervingly steady. I'll handle it. That afternoon, while she was drowning in unanswered emails, she heard a soft knock on her desk. Jake. He stood there with 2 cups of hot coffee, his shirt faintly stained with ink. You look like you just fought a dragon. Natalie shot him a sharp glance. If it were a real dragon, at least I could roast it for dinner. Jake set the coffee down. Tell me, what's this dragon's name? And so, she explained, summarizing the mess in clipped words, sighs long enough to stretch across 3 deadlines. Jake listened quietly, then asked, Want me to help? She raised an eyebrow. You're an international lawyer, Jake. This is poetry, not a $10 million contract. He shrugged. Lawyers know how to put out fires, too, especially when the fire's burning someone they care about. For the first time in days, Natalie laughed. Fine, but if this campaign sinks, I'm blaming my unpaid assistant. The 2 of them dove into the chaos together. Jake rewrote every email to the author, his wording sly, yet respectful bending, without breaking. He even called the printing house directly requesting a 3-day extension, something Natalie had never dared to attempt. Meanwhile, she tore through the manuscript, editing, redesigning posters, and inventing replacements for the withdrawn poems. Each time she nearly collapsed over her desk, a fresh cup of coffee appeared at her side, like magic. At this rate, are you investing in the coffee shop, or just in my sanity? She muttered one bleary night, her eyes red. Jake chuckled. Any lamppost that needs light, I'll switch it on. By Wednesday night, an email finally arrived from the poet. The subject line was clean and sharp. Agreed to keep the poems, send the final draft. Natalie broke down in tears, not loud sobs, just the kind that came when every ounce of tension finally slipped away. Jake gently rested a hand on her shoulder. You did it. She smiled through her tears. No, we did it. The next morning in the conference room, the editor-in-chief stormed in, face taut as a wire. Then he broke into a rare smile, clapping Natalie on the shoulder. Well done. You saved the entire campaign. I don't know how you pulled it off, but bravo. The whole team exhaled in relief. Natalie stood there, hands still stained with ink from the manuscript. When she stepped out of the room, she found Jake leaning casually against the wall, holding yet another fresh cup of coffee. So, you're not just a napkin twister anymore. Now you handle poets too, she teased. Jake winked. Napkin twisting was phase 1. Phase 2, become the partner of the woman I love. She laughed, stepping closer to him. And for the first time in years, Natalie felt something with absolute clarity. This time, he wasn't promising to stay. He had chosen to stay through action, not words. A year had passed since that rainy night, since Jake had held the umbrella shielding Natalie not with promises, but with presence. Time had marched on, yet this time it hadn't erased. It had built, not with grand gestures, but with countless little things. Every morning, Natalie still arrived at the office on time. But now, a cup of coffee always waited on her desk. Not from her usual cafe, but from Hearth and Bean. the place Jake had become a regular just to ask how she liked it brewed. As for Jake, he was still a lawyer, but no longer chasing flights across continents. He had turned down 3 offers from international firms, choosing instead to open a small office in Boston, specializing in contracts for local businesses. No more suitcase waiting by the door. No more boarding passes peeking from his vest pocket. No more, just a few years, then I'll come back. That morning, inside the publishing company's conference room, a banner stretched across the wall. Congratulations to our new editor-in-chief, Natalie Harper. So Stexpulkorst and Omstar. Applause thundered through the room. Natalie stood among her colleagues, raising a glass of pink mocktail. I promised to continue burning the staff kitchen at least 3 times a quarter to maintain my title as Queen of Scorched Pasta. The room erupted in laughter, but one man only smiled quietly, Jake standing at the doorway, his eyes filled with pride. That evening, friends gathered at a small bar to celebrate. Soft jazz played in the background, the mood lively yet warm. Natalie was the center of it all as always. Witty, charming, making everyone laugh until their sides ached. I'm telling you, she declared, slapping the table, if anyone writes a book about me, the title has to be The Girl Who Defeated Deadlines with Caffeine and Inner Monologues. A friend burst out laughing. Then what's Jake, the side character who fetches coffee? Natalie shot Jake a dramatic look, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Not a side character. He's the senior special assistant / keeper of the office water cooler. Jake only smiled quietly, slipping his hand into hers beneath the table. And then, as the laughter faded, Jake stood gently tapping a spoon against his glass. The room fell silent. Natalie arched an eyebrow, suspicious. What's this? Don't tell me you're about to read poetry. I'm the editor. You'd need my approval first. Jake smiled. From his pocket he pulled out a small velvet box. Then, kneeling, his voice deep but steady, he said, Natalie Harper, you're the one who showed me that presence matters more than any promise. This past year, every small act, from changing the water jug to fixing the printer, wasn't out of duty. It was because I wanted to share every day with you, even the dullest ones. He opened the box to reveal a ring. I won't promise to always be right, but I promise to always be here. Not in words, but in every day I live with you. Will you marry me? The bar went silent. Natalie stood frozen, her eyes a storm of emotions. Shock, fear, tenderness. Until at last, light broke through. She laughed, tears spilling. First I have to ask, will you do the dishes? Jake burst out laughing. I'll wash dry and even tackle the laundry, if you'll say yes. Her hand trembled as she extended it firm despite the quiver. Then, yes. Applause and cheers erupted around them. Friends swarmed with congratulations. But Jake looked only at her, as if the whole world had narrowed to just Natalie standing at the center of the whirlwind of love. Later that night, as they left the bar, their hands entwined beneath the streetlights, Natalie leaned close and whispered, You know, Jake, I'll still be afraid, but this time, I'll be afraid with you. Jake squeezed her hand, whispering back, I'll be afraid too, but fear with you is worth more than any certainty. And so they walked on, slowly but surely. Not with grand vows, but with each step side by side, one day at a time. Spring arrived earlier than usual. Cherry blossoms bloomed along Beacon Street, painting a soft pink path that Natalie had always loved. That morning, she left her small apartment with an old leather bag and a freshly printed manuscript. A quiet smile on her lips when she saw Jake waiting downstairs, holding a coffee and a bag of muffins from their favorite shop. Strawberry muffins, she asked. Do you think I'd dare change it up? Jake grinned. Consistency is the gold standard in the coffee industry. They both laughed. Jake's work now was busy, but steady. His small law office had built a loyal base of local clients. No crushing pressure of global contracts, no midnight calls from across the ocean. He once told her, Success isn't where the next flight takes me, but having a reason to come home every night. Natalie, now editor-in-chief, still stayed up late reading manuscripts. But these nights were different. When she dozed off at her desk, someone was there to drape a blanket over her shoulders. Every morning, someone reminded her, don't skip breakfast. One afternoon, Natalie surprised Jake at his office with a manuscript wrapped in ribbon. This is the first print of the book I chose, and the heroine. She winked. She loves fixing printers and makes her boyfriend wash dishes. Jake laughed, opening it. On the first page was a dedication. For the little things that are never small, thank you for not disappearing. He looked up, eyes soft with emotion. Can I hang this on the door? So every client knows the real reason I said no to Singapore. That evening on the balcony of their apartment, Natalie touched the heart-shaped keychain, now holding a real key. Jake stepped out draping a jacket over her shoulders before sitting beside her. Together, they gazed out at the city glowing gold under the streetlights. I know you don't fully trust yet, he said slowly, and I'm not asking for that. I just need to know that each day you choose to trust me a little more than yesterday. Natalie turned to him, her eyes softening. I used to think people only get one true love in a lifetime, but now I think maybe real love comes back, when you're finally strong enough to understand what it needs. A few weeks later, they held a small ceremony in the park where they'd had their first college date. Just close friends and a handful of colleagues. No stage, no extravagant gowns. Natalie wore a simple white dress, her hair loose in the breeze. Jake, in a navy suit, had a jasmine pinned to his lapel. When the minister asked, "Jake Brennan, do you vow to always be present one small act at a time, without grand promises, only with daily devotion?" Jake squeezed Natalie's hand, smiling. No vow, but I will do it. Laughter rippled through the guests. Natalie cried. That night back at their apartment, Natalie hung her wedding dress by the window. The wind made it billow like a white sail while she stood beside Jake, watching Boston's lights shimmer across the glass. You know, she whispered, I'm still afraid everything could vanish one day. Jake wrapped his arms around her from behind, whispering into her hair. Then every morning I'll start over, brewing coffee, watering the plants, changing the water jug. So, you'll never face that fear alone. And so they stood, not swearing forever, but quietly, beginning each new day with the smallest acts of love. Some love stories don't begin with a destined touch or a stolen glance across a crowded room. Some begin with a half-finished glass of wine, an empty seat across the dinner table, a whispered line, pretend I'm your boyfriend. Natalie and Jake's story wasn't a fairy tale. It was full of breaks, wounds, and moments where trust nearly collapsed. But what made it beautiful was that they chose not to give up. Jake didn't come back with roses and apologies. He came back by changing water jugs, fixing printers, and quietly tending to a jasmine plant. And Natalie didn't forgive with words, but by waking up each morning and allowing him one more chance, a space in her day for him to step into. In a world where people rush to replace one another, where everything can be ordered and returned, true love isn't found in grand vows. It's in repeating the small things day after day, not out of duty, but out of love. And if you ask, did they live happily ever after? The answer is, they didn't need ever after. They only needed today, then tomorrow, then the day after that. One small act at a time, like the quiet jingle of an old heart-shaped keychain holding a brand new key. That was enough for a love steadfast, tender, and whole.